Headphone highlights. Hello, welcome back. We are talking about another gaming headset today, continuing down our gaming headset line of content. And today we're talking about these. Now, off the bat, you're probably looking at this and thinking, well, where's the microphone? We'll talk about that because it's actually pretty interesting. These are the EPOS H6PROs. They're pretty freaking stylish. A little bit overly designed, maybe? But hey, maybe it's a design you really like. It's definitely a design statement. It's quite the looker. It does come in a variety of different colors. This is kind of a forest green color, metallic green color that I like a lot. I think it looks pretty cool, but you can also get these in all white, all black, and maybe blue. Yeah, I think you like a navy blue as well. So yeah, these are a gaming headset. But these are pretty cool because unlike most gaming headsets, they're open back. What's extra cool about these is that you actually can buy these one way or the other. You can get a closed back version or an open back version. I opted for the open back version. The only physical difference between the two is this kind of grill right here that kind of goes onto the side and out behind the headband. So that's the open of the back of the headphone. So open back has the grill, the closed back does not. It's just solid plastic. So let's look over the build. These are built actually pretty flippin' well. One of the better built gaming headsets we've looked at so far for sure. It is mostly plastic. That should be of no surprise, but it's very good plastic. It's very high quality. Another Raid. What? But yeah, the build. Lots of plastic. Makes it very, very light, but it's very good, robust plastic. It's very high quality plastic. There's a little bit of a spring steel going up into the headband here that gives it a little extra reinforcement. But the mechanism here on the yoke for adjusting is pretty interesting. It kind of comes, the yoke attaches to the side of the cup here, goes up into an angle and into the headband here. It allows for a little bit of movement here and a little bit of movement forward and back. So it's just enough movement that you can make it comfortable for your ear. The headband uses a very, very satisfying clicky adjustment system. You can probably hear that. And though it's very, very subtle, there are marks on the bracket here, on the headband. That's very hard for you to see. There you go. Little subtle markers to help you adjust it to exactly the kind of height adjustment you want. And it is pretty firm adjusting. It's not the loosest. So I'm pretty confident if you want to set it to, say, a 3 and leave it there, it probably will, unless you bump it around. The headband is a soft, very, very soft, fake leather. Nothing we haven't seen before. It's not really like a protein leather. It's just a very, very fake leather feeling fabric. And it's wrapped that way on the underside as well, with a decent amount of padding, as you can see there. This is built very, very similarly to those H3Xs we looked at from Drop, but these are a bit larger. In fact, let me grab those really quick so you can see the comparison. Here are the H3Xs. Very similar build, yes. But look at the size difference here. Pretty big difference. And that translates primarily with the ear volume. I mentioned before that the ear volume on the H3Xs, it's just barely enough where my ears are able to fit in there without the pads like crushing my ears. It fits fine, but it's just barely enough. These offer quite a bit more ear volume. I'll try and show you the difference in the pad size here to give you the idea. So we're looking at big difference in volume here. Oh my God. Yeah, there you go. That's about the best I could do for you. Here's your H3Xs and here is your H6PROs. So big difference in ear volume. That means that these are a lot more over ear than these are. Not that these did a bad job. They do just fine as an over ear, but these offer quite a bit more around the ear comfort. Just knocking shit over. Whatever. The pads are a pretty nice, very soft, very kind of not super dense, but fairly dense padding. And the material here is kind of like a jersey fabric type of feel. Kind of feels like a t-shirt. So it's smooth and it's soft, but they're nice pads. And like I said, they're decently large, especially tall wise. We're looking at almost a 4-knuckle tall vertical, and then a good 2.5 knuckle width on the inside. So plenty of room above and below your ear, and just enough room to kind of get around the ear. So the ear volume on here is great. The cable that it comes with is really identical to the one that comes with the H3X. So it has this not exactly typical 2.5 millimeter jack there that has that weird kind of nub, and it's very elongated. Again, it's because the entry point here is kind of a deep insert. So it has to kind of go in and get pushed through a good length. In fact, it goes in that much. That's how far in it goes. So unfortunately, once again, thank you, EPOS. Once again, it's going to be difficult to get third-party cables for these because of that deep insert. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Fortunately, though, the cable that it does come with is a decent enough cable. It's braided. It's nice. It's straight. It's not a ridiculous length. 4.5 something feet maybe. And at the other end, it terminates to a right angle 3.5 millimeter 4-pole. So yes, you could plug this into your controller to do microphone stuff, and it would work just fine. It does come with a second cable. The second cable is built the same as the first, but now we have, instead of a 4-pole, we have the same insert termination to that weird elongated 2.5 millimeter. But now we have a dual entry for splitting the microphone and the audio. So if you want to be able to connect the headset to your PC, then you could do so with something like this. This cable is quite a bit longer than the other one. As you can see, I never even bothered to unwrap it because it's not something that I need. But hey, if you sit further away from your source, maybe you need to plug it into your TV or whatever, you got a longer cable to do that. To reiterate, EPOS is Sennheiser's gaming line of audio equipment, more or less. So that's cool. You got that kind of Sennheiser pedigree a little bit in there, so you can kind of expect some pretty decent quality build and decent quality sound. So cool feature. The microphone. Where the heck is it? There's no microphone on this thing. Well, the microphone is detachable. And not only is the microphone detachable, but you can actually cover up where it was. Everything looks seamless here, but if you look right there, see those little notches? That gives you a hint. Boop. I can pull this little cap off. Goodbye, cap. And then, ta-da, microphone. It just snaps right on there. Look at that. That's pretty freaking sweet. I like that a lot. It's a very cool system. It works very, very well. This is on there pretty good. I'm not worried about it flying off. The magnets are strong enough that it is very, very much on there. It's on there. It's good. And just like with the H3X, the mechanism to operate the microphone is when it's up, it is off. When you want to turn it on, bring it down. It clicks. There's an actuation point where it clicks, and once it's down, it is on. And it does bend if you want to bend it around, but I found that I don't really need to do that. When I wear these, the microphone's up, it's completely out of my way. I don't see it at all. When the microphone is down and on and I'm using it, the microphone is positioned at a pretty optimal point where my speaking volume is and the mouth position. So it's not like really in my line of sight down here, and it's not like inside my mouth. So I think it works just fine as it is, but you could bend it around if you wanted to. And the microphone quality, in terms of how it sounds, is pretty darn good. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, here's what the microphone sounds like. This is what the microphone sounds like for the EPOS H6PRO. Good stuff. It sounds pretty good. I mean, it's up there with the best of them that we've listened to so far. It's still not quite as good as those Cooler Masters, but it's pretty close. It's a pretty excellent mic. High quality microphone. I highly recommend the microphone. Comfort. Like the H3Xs, these suffer with the same typical Sennheiser problems of comfort, primarily a tremendous amount of clamp force. These have even worse clamp force than the H3Xs right out of the box. It is really pretty bad. It's a lot. It hurts. It really hurts. And boy howdy, if you remember from our review of the H3X, I talk about the shape of these pads and how it's cool that they're an ear shape, right? But unfortunately, it adds this sharp point to the very bottom of the pad. And when you have a huge amount of clamp force and a sharp point of your design like this, you're putting a lot of pressure right there. I put these on. There's a lot, the majority of the pressure from the clamp force is getting isolated right down here at the very tip end of this pad. Now, these pads are larger than the H3Xs. And I mentioned that the H3Xs, unfortunately, where that kind of point ended up on and where that pressure was hitting was like pretty much right there on my jawline where my jaw opens and closes. And that was really uncomfortable. So this doesn't hit the same spot. It doesn't hit here. It goes a little bit further down, probably a good 1/2 inch. So it's not right on that joint, but it is still on my jaw. So that sucks. It still sucks. It's still not great. And when you got all that clamp force right there, right on the bone, oh my God, it's kind of a nightmare. These were excruciatingly uncomfortable right out of the box. But again, like I mentioned with the H3X, you can stretch it out a bit to help alleviate a bit of that clamp force. Now, unlike with the H3X, these don't really take as well to taking the headband and just physically bending it. That works out well for the H3X because of that spring steel in there, and it doesn't really have much else, but this has other things going on, and it has a lot more kind of plastic mechanics in here. And when I try to do it just a little bit, I can just feel that it's really stressing. So I'm not as confident to bend the headband as I am with the H3X. However, it did take very well to just taking the box that it came in. I mentioned this last time with the yoga pads, the yoga blocks. Well, with this one, just take the box and put the headphone on the box, just like this. It looks silly, but this made all the difference in the world. I left it like this for like overnight, and it made them so much more comfortable, significantly better. So this is my recommendation. If you don't have anything else to kind of stretch them out on, just use the box they come in, leave them on here for a night or two. It's not going to totally fix the problem. Over time, if you take them off the box, over time they are going to kind of start to get that original clamp force again. But, you keep putting them on here like this, and at least for a while, they're going to be okay. So do this. I highly recommend it. It's the same problem I had with the HD6XXs and the Jubilees. Same problem. Those clamp forces insane, and the shape of those oval pads, it just hits you right on the freaking jaw. It sucks. So there's that. The clamp force is unfortunate. The pads, fortunately, are, again, soft and pretty comfortable. They breathe pretty well, so I never had to worry too much about my ears getting very warm. And the top of the headband has plenty of padding, and it's soft, and it really shapes pretty well to the head. I don't get a whole lot of weight pressure up here because the headphones are so light, but I do have a little bit, very minor. I think wearing the hat probably helps a little bit, but there is just the smallest amount of point pressure right at the very, very top of the head. Because if you look at this, it doesn't really arc very well. It's not doing this on top of my head. It's doing this. So it's a bit flat. So you do get a little bit of point pressure right at the very tip there. But I have these extended all the way down in terms of the headband size, and it helps. I barely notice it. The clamp force is taking all the attention right now. So, like with the H3Xs, we're going to rate the comfort differently. How it is out of the box versus how it is after you have it stretch out for a little while. So, out of the box, ouch. Ouch, ouch. Not great. We're going with a 4 clouds of comfort. It's about, I think they're a little bit worse than the H3Xs, but not enough to go down like a half grade. So 4 clouds of comfort right out of the box. They are painful, but you stretch them out. You put them over their box that they come with for a little while, and you stretch them out. And you can see it's already looking a little bit looser. And it's a heck of a lot better. A whole heck of a lot. It goes from a 4 to a 6.5. So 6.5 clouds of comfort after you stretch them out. Perfectly usable. They're fine. Just maybe over prolonged time, it might come back and you might need to stretch them out again, or they're going to start hurting. Comfort's good, more or less. Build's great. How do they sound? I think the easiest thing to do is compare them with our other best sounding gaming headsets so far. Primarily the Cooler Masters and those H3Xs. I mentioned last review on the H3Xs that I thought the H3Xs were an excellent sounding gaming headset, one that you could use to just listen to general music because they had a much more neutral sound signature than most gaming headsets I've ever heard. It's a very well controlled bass line. It's very neutral. Not a whole lot of soundstage, but a decent amount. They did great. They did a great performer for general music use. And the same went with the Cooler Masters, though the Cooler Masters were a bit more bombastic, a bit warmer, a bit more energetic. These, if you were to look at a graph on this side, you have the H3Xs, which have that really, really bright treble range and a bit of a more neutral sound signature. In the middle here, you have the Cooler Masters, which sound lovely and velvety and wonderful and have a nice, clean, warm, enjoyable sound to them. And then over here, you would have the H6PROs. These lean way more into your typical gaming headset type of sound. They sound absolutely nothing like the H3Xs. Where what the H3Xs did that I praised them for, these go the opposite direction with. These are extremely bass heavy, and it's not very good quality bass. It's kind of muddy, it's kind of bloomy, and it definitely veils. The sub bass is there, and it's pretty punchy, and it could be enjoyable, but there's a lot of it. So starting with music performance, can you listen to music with these? Sure. Should you? I probably wouldn't normally recommend it, but of the genres of music that I listen to these with, I think that they worked pretty okay for house music and just general kind of EDM. Because the bass on these is so forward, it kind of works for that kind of stuff. But in general, the bass range is overwhelming. It is front and center, the primary aspect of the sound signature. Bass, a shit ton of bass, and it lingers. The mid-range is very, very pushed away. It's recessed, and also it sounds far away. So you don't get a whole lot of mid-range detail. It's getting very clouded and muddied up by the bass range. Because you're losing a lot of detail in the mid-range, you're not really getting much of imaging in the mid-range. So imaging is okay, but it's getting muddied from the bass. Vocals are probably where the headset suffers the most is with vocals. Vocals sound very far. They sound almost like they're an afterthought to the sound. And they do generally have a kind of warmth to them that feels a little unnatural and a little bit of distortion when at higher volumes. Treble range, it's not great. The treble performance isn't very good. The treble is very, very reduced. So you're not getting a lot of detail, and it's kind of just generalizing anything probably over like 15K. It's just like 15K and that's everything else. So you're not getting a whole lot of treble performance out of these. They are open back, so they do have some soundstage. It's not as much soundstage as I would expect from an open back like this, but it is more than the H3X's. I don't think it's quite as much as it is with the Cooler Masters, though. I feel like the Cooler Masters have a bit more soundstage, which is odd because the Cooler Masters are a closed back headset. But the soundstage is okay. It's just not quite as much as I would expect from an open back. It's like here-ish. All right, it's fine. Imaging for music, again, because it's so boomy, you're losing a lot of that detail, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to really do instrument separation and isolate where things are coming from. You get a general idea. Yeah, I can hear that, the timpani's over there. Yeah, I can hear the guitarist is somewhere over there. Yeah, I can kind of hear that the chamber of the hall is echoing a little bit behind me, but it's not very precise. So with music, it's a little hard to recommend. It's not the worst. We've heard worse, but it's especially for something like orchestral music, I think that is a bit too complex and too layered for this to be able to pick it up. It doesn't have the nuance to deal with it. But again, house EDM stuff, that sounds fine. I was able to sit back and bop to some stuff in those genres and enjoy them, and it was fine. How about gaming? It's a little bit of the same story, but gaming does improve it a little bit. It's still incredibly boomy and bassy, but the ridiculous amount of bass is very immersive for stuff like explosions and artillery. So it does have kind of a cinematic flair to it. The mid-range is still very pushed away, but probably just a little bit closer. You're not getting a whole lot more mid-range detail, like especially stuff like dialogue. Playing Mass Effect with these, everyone sounds like they're really far away. They sound like they're like standing almost 20 feet away from me. And not in a soundstage sort of way, in a kind of a muffled, they're just talking far away and quietly sort of way. Imaging did get a little bit more improved, though. The gaming performance with imaging was pretty good. I was able to hear when I would have planes fly over me, they would go from like, my right shoulder over my head and then pass along my right shoulder. I could pinpoint that fairly well. Unfortunately, because the treble range is such poor performance on these, stuff like pop shots and footsteps are very hard to detect because they're very, very quiet if they're at all. Because again, it just doesn't have the treble performance. So not a good headset for competitive gameplay. Not that I would recommend, because again, it can't pick it up. But overall, it was enjoyable. It's very cinematic. It sounds big. It's trying to make it's doing something to try and simulate this like big sound with all that bass. And it accomplishes that in a kind of synthetic way. Like, sure, yeah, it sounds big and impressive, but it's not actually big. It doesn't actually sound like it's out here or things are really dynamic. It just kind of has this simulated largeness to it. So they're decent gaming headsets, not so good for music. I like the H3Xs more than these by a pretty good margin. I think that these are built better, and I think that I like the microphone situation more, but these don't sound anywhere near as good as the H3Xs. And I guess they maybe lean a little bit more towards the Cooler Master sound signature, but the Cooler Masters are just much bigger, hitting, better performing headphones than these. These are muddy. These are boomy, bloomy, bassy, and muddy. Cooler Masters are able to be warm and exciting, but also have performance and detail and dynamics. So it's not a big recommendation from me, especially because they're not cheap. This is like $160 for this headset. Oh, dude, that's twice as much as the H3X's. That's a hard sell. Let me tell you. Yeah, they look cool, but I don't know. I don't think I can recommend them, especially not for that price. If you can get them for $100, maybe, but $160 for these, oh no, that's rough. Maybe the closeback version is better. I don't know. I can't imagine it being that significantly different because, again, even though these are open back, they don't really have a very open back sound. But who knows? Who knows? Anyway, EPOS H6PRO. It's a decent gaming headset, but not really much for anything else. It is overpriced. It's just overpriced. If you want to have something warmer and more exciting, get the Cooler Masters. If you want something that's very bright and detailed in the treble, get the H3Xs. That's my recommendation.